Welcome to our International Women's Day panel. My name is Márcia Balisciano, Chief Sustainability Officer for RELX, and I am delighted to host this session today and introduce you to two amazing women. This is also a podcast for The World We Want, which is our podcast focused on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And Blair and Susan Blanchet were both winners of the WE Empower UN SDG Challenge. It recognizes women from around the world who are doing amazing things to advance the SDGs. Let me tell you a little bit about both of them. Andy is co-founder of Upflow, a geothermal research and innovation company, which is based in New Zealand. Upflow is dedicated to harnessing the vast potential of geothermal energy to provide intelligent solutions to global industries. The mission is to challenge conventional thinking and inspire the adoption of STEAM, science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics. Upflow assembles expert teams to work on cutting-edge technologies and interdisciplinary approaches to build real-world solutions to some of the world's most pressing problems. Upflow also drives the uptake and smart utilization of all aspects of geothermal energy, including heat, fluid, gases, minerals, and microbes. Susan is the CEO and founder of Origen Air. Origen Air's mission is to create biophilic rooftop oases that metabolize toxins and purify indoor air, resulting in improved indoor air quality. Their purification process removes harmful airborne toxins, pollutants, and disease-transmitting particles from indoor environments. By collaborating biotechnology with HVAC systems, they enable the recirculation of indoor air, reducing the need for excessive air exchanges for improved ventilation. Origen Air focuses on producing efficient and sustainable living air purifiers using genetically modified plants that are 92 times more effective at removing toxins from the air, making a significant impact on indoor air quality and protection. So I want to begin with the same question for both of you, which is the question we ask all our guests on The World We Want, which is, what world should we want and how do we create it? So I'm going to start with you, Andy.
Kia ora everyone, tēnā koutou katoa. The world we want, so I think we just want simply fairness for everybody. I think the world that I want is a place where everyone can truly be their whole, complete and full selves, and where we all have the necessities for a good and healthy and prosperous life. I think we should create a world where we experience the full, awesome, raw and mighty power of the natural world and realize that we have a burden of care. And in Māori, in New Zealand, Māori, our Indigenous people, call this kaitiakitanga or guardianship. So we have to look after our resources sustainably to ensure that they're there for future generations. And we want to prosper in that future. Thanks.
I can just jump right in and answer that question as well. So what world do we want and how do we create it? For me, that answer is a world where we all live sustainably. Like Andy said, we have a responsibility to protect this beautiful planet that is not ours for the taking. Prior to starting the company, I was an environmental lawyer for 15 years and felt I didn't have the teeth in the law to accomplish what I wanted to do. And that's why I started Origen Air. So the world that I want, and I hope everyone else wants, is a sustainable one where there is, equal to a charter or a Bill of Rights that protects our planet and the people on it. And how do we create it? by making stricter laws, by making government accountable to hold these regulations up. You know, we make sustainable air purifiers. One of the most difficult hurdles at first was finding recycled plastic or sustainable materials. You know, I look at all of our competitors and they all are made of virgin plastic. Like there's so many changes we need to make in the supply chain, in procurement to change the world and create one we want. We have to start purchasing with our purchasing power, sustainable and living every day. You know, Origen Air just became a B Corp last week, something I'm very proud of. It took us 3 years in the making, but it's something that you just don't do. It's something you live every day. And that's the world that I want to see created.
Well, that's fantastic. And I think that both of you are very inspiring in terms of the businesses that you have created, but also your personal commitment. And I wanted to ask you both about the SDGs and what do they mean to you personally?
I can jump in there. At Origen Air, we focus on 3 SDGs, 3 good health and well-being, 11 sustainable cities and communities, and 13 climate action. All of the sustainable development goals are important, and you know, you can't do everything. Another personal SDG for me is equality of everyone. Right, I'm a big champion of other women entrepreneurs. And until the SDGs become part of our everyday, we aren't going to be able to make the change we need. I know Andy and I were both at COP28 with Vital Voices, and there we were brought to bring women's voices to the climate discussions. And until we have female voices in the climate discussions, it's going to be very difficult for us to get to where we need to be. I often look at the way women are treated as the way we treat our earth. So until we bring an equality to everything, it's going to be very difficult for us to meet our sustainable development commitments.
And for you, Andy?
Yeah, what do the SDGs mean personally? So for me, it's really important that we have a common language that we speak into. And it's a call to action to improve the planet and the quality of lives for everyone. I don't have children, and I feel a really strong moral obligation to make the world a more fair and more equitable place for everybody's children. So I co-founded Upflow with my business partner, Paul, to be a vehicle to do really cool stuff with great people for the good of the world. So we became solutioneers. We really want to do the hard, complex stuff. That means that SDGs become real, and we want to use science as a vehicle to do that. I think personally, how does it tie to me? Obviously, as Susan said, you know, we have real raw experience with being female entrepreneurs and the prejudices that we suffer through that process. And so equity and equality is really gender equality is really important to me as well. But also the broader SDGs around sustainable planet and communities and energy. So a project example of how we have created projects that line up with SDGs is our Extremophiles project in New Zealand. So, I mean, hang in there with me, I'll explain what that is. So we're working with a Māori organisation in New Zealand. Māori are the Indigenous peoples of New Zealand, and they demand more than economic outcomes. So societal, cultural and environmental outcomes are just as, if not more important than dollars. So we've sourced 2 microorganisms from their geothermal ecosystem. And what happens is these bugs work symbiotically together, eating greenhouse gases like CO2 and methane, and they produce single cell protein. So what starts out as carbon dioxide and methane ends up as food. And we're focused on that for animals right now, but we're hoping to get that to humans. So we're really proud of this one. And so the SDGs sit in our hearts and all the things that we do inside our organisation and with us personally as people.
Well, Andy, maybe just a quick follow-on question, because how do you scale this? It sounds incredible, but how do you take this and scale it not only within New Zealand, but farther afield?
Yeah, it's really important. I think we are trying to ignite other people. So when we talk about our goals and ambitions, is we want to inspire other people to use STEAM, so science, technology, engineering, arts, and maths. And how we scale in a number of ways. We do that early pilot techno-economic feasibility works that remove the barriers of investment and stand up the really early first prototype type products. And then we spin them out for others to commercialize and make them into big business. And our goal is we want to inspire and ignite others so that they see it, can touch it and feel it, and then they go and build it around the world. So, yeah.
Very cool. And Susan, what inspired you to start your business, and how did you get the idea of integrating biotechnology with HVAC to create these unique indoor environments?
Yeah, mine's quite a personal story. I was working as legal counsel. Well, it begins in my teens, really. I read Rachel Carson's Silent Spring and was absolutely horrified that toxins in our environment accumulate in our bodies. So that's how it began. And so I became an environmental lawyer, and for 15 years, held operators accountable at contaminated sites. But like I said earlier, a lot of the regulatory framework in Canada, where I am, had been slashed. Like 80% of regulations were cut while I was at law school. And the environmental criminal code is just a slap on the wrist. Many companies that were polluting and leaving toxic sites would just close their company down, and there was no way to recover the money to rehabilitate it or bring it back. And at the same time, my father was diagnosed with early onset dementia. And, I'm about to turn 50 next month, and he was only 51. And he'd worked in wastewater treatment plants, like notoriously bad air. But there was no way for me to prove it, right? Air moves, it's hard to measure. So at that time, right, it was actually shortly after he passed that I found these genetically modified plants at the University of Washington in the US. And I wrote to them and negotiated the rights to a license. And then as the company went along, I renegotiated, and I now have global exclusive rights to distribute these plants as part of an air purifier or just to sell them on their own. So that's how I started into it, just with a desire, if I couldn't litigate better air, to clean it. And the biosphere is not commercial yet. We're still developing it. But right now we have commercial air purifiers for businesses. And in September, we're going to be shipping our first personal air purifiers that you can have right on your desk or beside your bed, where you spend 8 hours a day. And it will just be continuously cleaning your air with these genetically enhanced plants. One last thing about the plants, there's an urban myth that regular plants remove toxins. Like, yes, they change CO2 into oxygen, but in all of our testing in laboratory and in the field, we found like 0.001% removal of volatile organic compounds, things like off-gassing from cleaning products, carpets, glues, paints, exhaust from cars. Regular plants don't remove that. And our genetically enhanced plants have a liver enzyme. So the easiest way to think about it is they work like your liver to metabolize these toxins and turn them into plant growth and oxygen. So much like Andy, we're using nature to turn it into something useful and beautiful.
So you're both pioneers and you both are incredibly brave because it's hard to start things, and it's even harder to keep them going. So where do you get your own energy from to stay the course on in your activities and in terms of women who may be listening to our discussion, what do you say to them in terms of taking what might be an idea, maybe a crazy idea, and turning that into a business solution and a solution for society? Maybe, okay, Andy, I'll say you first.
Okay, yeah. See, we're both lining up to answer that one. Yeah, it is really difficult, and it's interesting because it just seems like the traditional pipelines for success weren't built for us as women. It's like wearing this really scratchy sweater that just doesn't fit us. And so you find lots of women that hit those glass ceilings, that find they don't fit when they start climbing up through businesses, and you have ideas and you want to operate maybe a bit differently in the world. And so we see lots of women spin out into businesses because business is also a vehicle to do good in the world, and also to have your ideas live. And it's really difficult when you see factors around investment into business, into female-led businesses. In New Zealand, I think last year 7% of VC funding went to women-led businesses, and you think, gosh, how do we even survive that? So it's a really difficult landscape to start a business. I think women traditionally have purpose-led businesses, and you need more than dollars to help motivate you. You have to have real purpose. I think all the bad stories and how hard it is, it's hard for everybody in business. It's how do we survive paying the bills next month? Or, critical things on the outside that happen that have influence on the inside. That happens with every business. But I would say to women that, what's the worst thing that could happen? And quite often the answer to that is to be exactly where I am in 5 years. And I would say there is no perfect solution. You just got to do your best and have a go. And all the stats and horror stories you hear, put them aside and just have a go and go for it, because the women, not just women, but the whole world needs the kind of solutions and the diverse thinking that we need to solve those big problems. We're going to need more than just what we currently have, because you can't use the minds that create the problem to solve the problem. So we just need everyone to get in there and burst open those existing pipelines and build new ones that fit that really diverse range of people that we need to solve those big challenges. So for women out there, there are networks of us that are out there ready to support you. And I would say have a go, because what's the worst that could happen? You end up back to where you are today, and we need your solutions. So I also would say one extra thing I would say to all women, actually, if you're in a position to climb the ladder, do it and get to the top as fast as you can, because who cares if you filled a quota or promoted because you're a woman, because we need every single one of you to get to the top of those pipelines and that infrastructure and start throwing the ladders back down to everyone coming behind us. So we can't just wait for equality and fairness, because it's not working. So thanks.
Okay, Susan.
I love that, Andy. One of the quotes you said is going to have to be like your quote. I think it was like, we can't use the minds that created it to fix it. That's the Andy quote of the day. So I'm going to answer this in two parts. One, like, just when you're starting out, I would say, start working in your spare time, like in your evenings and your weekends, like taking I kind of took a leap. I just went for it. And it's hard, especially when you choose hardware and plants. Like sometimes I'm like, why did I choose the two most difficult businesses? Like they are living things that I have to ship, and hardware is, they say, hard. So really, community, what Andy said, reach out, find the community. There's a lot of us, and like the We Empower community, winning this award has opened so many doors for all of us. It's led to other communities of women, and there is a global movement of women, and most of us have purpose as one of our key goals in our business, not financial. Like, you need everything, but most women businesses that I've met are purpose led. So, and then if you are a corporate woman, like, think about your purchasing power. The investment is one. Women receive globally, it's actually gone down. I've heard stats as low as 1.8%. But even worse than that, I got through that barrier. I raised my first 2 rounds, and then I start selling. And I'm part of a woman business enterprise organization that gives me direct access to procurement professionals. And that's when I learned that women receive less than 0.05% of procurement. So if you have that position in your business, really think about who you're buying from. Like, it actually still blows my mind that 99.5% of procurement comes from male-led companies. Like, just think about that for a minute, because once we get through one barrier, we're hit with another barrier. And I'm at a point in the company that I have my product commercialized, and I would be happy to just be selling and not having to raise more money. But I am yet again raising another round because of that next barrier. So know that there's several barriers. And then the second part of how I wanted to answer this is make sure you take care of yourself. For the first 3 years of the company, some days I was just 18 hours straight in front of sitting. And finally, about a year and a half ago, I woke up and I said, enough is enough. And I work out every day now. And I just make sure I at least have that 1 hour for me. And like one of my SDG goals, good health and well-being. Like, I woke up one day and I was like, how can I be running a health and well-being company when I'm not healthy? So make sure you put your health first, and everything else will start to flow from that. And again, I think I've got a sign behind my computer, and it's just like, I will not quit. And I think I've underlined it like 20 times. And that is a true entrepreneur. Like, we pivot. The home air purifier, everyone kept asking for it. My business sales were not hitting the levels I wanted because no one's going back to the office. You have to make those hard decisions, even if they're very scary, and pivot. And I pitched my new home air purifier on Friday in Vancouver. And immediately after I got off the stage, a woman came up to me and showed me her shopping cart where she had purchased 2 of them. And I nearly cried. Like, that's what it's all about. Women supporting women and helping us get to the next level.
Well, I really love that, Susan. It makes me think about completing a marathon. I have to be the most unathletic person on the planet, but it's just not wanting to quit and being willing to keep going when you feel tired and like you can't make it, that you have to just kind of stay the course, literally and figuratively. I had a period of time where I ran 7 marathons in 7 different cities for 7 different charities in 7 consecutive years before I decided to just walk briskly from then on. But I kind of relate to what you're saying about, not being willing to give up. And it really takes that kind of determination, doesn't it? And I also just want to highlight for those that are listening that the WE Empower UN SDG Challenge for 2024 is opening in March 2024. So you can find details on the RELX website. We're a very proud sponsor of the initiative alongside Arizona State University and the amazing organization Vital Voices. But just to say, for 2023, joining this amazing group of alumni, there was Andy, who was the winner for Asia Pacific. And of course, Susan, you were the winner for Europe, North America. But we also had a great project and the CEO and founder, Karen Semp, who was the winner for Latin America and the Caribbean for her project Innova Nation, which is an educational lab focused on motivating and empowering the upcoming generations of entrepreneurs and innovators and sustainability advocates for the Greater Middle East and North Africa. We had Mena Farouk, who is the co-founder of Dozy, a tech-based scooter and bicycle riding platform for women and girls out of Egypt, which is incredible, empowering women to be able to do what they want to do, have their own mobility, and to also help the environment by reducing traffic congestion and pollution, and overcoming stereotypes about women riders. And for Sub-Saharan Africa in 2023, we had a winner, Diana Mabogo, who is the founder and managing director of Millennium Engineers Enterprises from Tanzania, an amazing project, 100% women founded, led social enterprise specializing in renewable energy. So you're an incredible company. But I wanted to just ask you about, as you were kind of alluding to, Susan, and also for you, Andrea, about mentors and sponsors. You know, what's the difference? We need men as champions as well. How do we engage them? And maybe you might want to say something about a champion that's been beneficial for you both. So maybe starting with you, Andrea.
Yeah, and when you were reading those women's names, I started smiling because they're names that you're reading out, but we know the people behind them, and they're amazing women. And it's been such a pleasure to meet and support each other in our journeys. So I'd really encourage people to apply for that WE Empower. It's a really connecting and powerful opportunity. Yeah, mentors and sponsors. It's really, I think we seek them out, especially as women in weird sort of spaces in climate tech and other spaces, to find that we're not crazy and well, we may be a little crazy, but so that we can feel like we're not alone. And it's really lonely sometimes when you are not the norm and you are trying to do something really hard and meaningful, and it can get really lonely and hard, and it's hard to make decisions. I'm lucky I have a business partner, so I get to talk through ideas and decisions. But mentors and sponsors are really important. It's really important that we have people we can see. You know, visibility is really important, that we can see that we belong at tables, and that the way that we lead and think is useful and important, and it's valued. So, you know, and men, to have men part of that conversation is really important. I was a co-founder of a Women in Geothermal, which is a movement in the geothermal energy sector to empower women. And one of the key goals for us was to have 50% male membership, because what we know is that gender inequality for gender is not based. Men didn't do this to us. They didn't sit in rooms and go, let's keep the women down. Society is doing it to us. So unless we have all genders helping us to solve that problem and that issue, we're not going to change anything. And so currently at 34% male membership for WING, which is really, really cool. And we need all those people with the power to help pull us across those gaps. I think it's important to have sponsors. If you see someone in your organization and you look down and you think they are the person that we need up here, and work really hard to remove barriers and put their names into conversations and really lift them up. I think it's really important for managers, men and women, to do that. That's often easier than mentorship, because mentorship is basically friendship, and it's really hard. It's like Tinder. It's hard to put people together to have a really close relationship with mentoring, and that you often seek them out yourself and people you have chemistry with. And so I think formal mentoring is really difficult to collaborate and make happen and work. But I think sponsorship is something everybody can do. So if you look down and you think there's a woman that needs to be up here, then for the next year, just spend your time getting her and pulling her up. And I think that makes real change and real difference. And we need men to lean in on that as well, because I get lots of men who say to me, what can I do with this gender thing and empowering? And I would say sponsorship's an easy opportunity for them to participate and help lift up women. So
love that. Susan, from your perspective?
Well, first, I'm going to say you never know where you might make that connection that matters. So when you're out speaking, meeting people in community, just really try to form those connections. Actually, yesterday I asked Barbara Mowat, who's the president of Grow Your Biz, which is also a sponsor of WE Empower, to be one of my advisors, because she's a connector and she is dedicated to helping women rise up and a world connector. She's putting on a great conference in Vancouver in April, the end of April. It's called Accelerate, but it's about accelerating your business through community. And what I love about her Accelerate conference is it brings men and women together equally. Global political leaders, university leaders, business leaders, it's everyone. WE Empower was a lot more woman focused, and I also met some incredible, I would call them sponsors, in Amanda Ellis of Arizona State University, and also Elise Nelson of Vital Voices. I could walk into a room and be like, hey, this is what I'm doing. It's great. And people sometimes will just dismiss me and walk away. But when you have a sponsor walk into a room with you, especially someone at the level of those three women, and every room we walked into when we were at the WE Empower Challenge, one of them was going, hey, grabbing the mic and saying, I just want to introduce these 5 women and say what they're doing. And then all of a sudden, everyone's like, wow, that's incredible, right? Like self-sponsorship doesn't work. You need the other people lifting you up. So, pay it forward too. And now we've been fortunate enough over the last year to have all these incredible opportunities with women who are renowned in their industries, grabbing a mic and shouting out our names that we want to do it for others. And I think that's what men could do the most to help us. If you see a woman doing something cool, grab the mic and shout her out, because when a woman walks up to somebody in a room, they shouldn't have to continuously explain why they should be there. If someone else says, this is why they're here and why you should listen, it stops our continued, as a woman, I'm digressing a little bit, but as a woman, almost every time I start a conversation with someone, I feel like I have to pull out my credential list. Like, here you go, here's my resume. Whereas with men, they don't have to do that. That's one of the biggest barriers for women. Like, why do we have to prove it before we even start speaking? So that takes that away and makes the entire experience so much more lovely.
Well, thank you for that shout out to the co-founders of WE Empower, Ambassador Amanda Ellis, who was the ambassador for New Zealand to the United Nations in Geneva, who's now Senior Director of Global Partnerships and Networks at the Julie Ann Wrigley Global Futures Laboratory at ASU, and Elise Nelson, definitely a force to be reckoned with, the Chief Executive of Vital Voices. So 2 amazing women who got together to make this happen and bring in others like us at RELX. Well, I'm thinking about a phrase which says that what gets measured gets managed. And given that you are, with your respective companies, making an impact on the Sustainable Development Goals, how are you measuring the impact? So, Susan, maybe your thoughts on that one.
Well, this is where I would say, if you're very interested in measuring your impact, do consider becoming a B Corp. You have to measure it. You go through a year-long process where they make you prove how you're measuring it. So we measure our scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions. We also measure air quality, like all of our corporate purifiers have air quality sensors on them, so we can show how much we're reducing the volatile organic compounds, the CO2, and we report to our clients on a monthly basis. So you not only, and that's so important. Like when we first started, people are like, why are the plants behind glass? Like by looking at it, you can't, we made it so pretty, you can't tell what it's doing. So the reporting is extremely important, not only for sustainability goals, but also for commercial goals, right? It's finally becoming important to have good environmental and social governance. And companies you're selling to need to buy products that are going to help them. So our air quality sensors are how we do that, and that's how we earn points for our clients on the different ESG platforms. But it's not simple, but there are a lot of great tools out there. Reach out to me and I'd be happy to share some of the tools that we use to measure. There's some incredible calculators, like even on the Environmental Protection Agency in the US, there's a calculator where you can just put in your number and it will spit you out your GHG emissions or your metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. So ask about, there's lots of things to make it a little easier because it does seem daunting at first.
And how about from your perspective? I mean, especially Andy, how do you measure geothermal energy and then those incredible microorganisms and the translation of them into food? So what are you doing in terms of measuring impact?
Yeah, it's when we talk about how do we as a company measure impact of us, I think about it in two ways. I think about how do we operate and function as a company, as ourselves, and then also how do we select projects, and because we do sustainability and decarbonisation projects, and how do we consider that and think about that and measure the impacts. And so firstly, we recognise that we generate carbon in the operation of Upflow, and we do that by working in offices, traveling in cars and airplanes, and we think there's a real place for carbon offset trading schemes, but we also wanted to sync our emissions into something we can see, touch and feel. So there's an emotional sort of connection with, we're doing something to consider how we operate and live in the world. So we choose to offset our emissions with regards to how we operate with native trees. And last year we started planting the Upflow forest, and we recognise that these trees take about 50 years to reach their sort of peak carbon capture, but we wanted to start now, and we know it's not perfect, but we can't wait for perfection. So we started planting trees and creating the Upflow forest. And how do we think about the projects that we select? So we help companies improve and accelerate the use of renewable energy to decarbonize and produce goods. So we purposefully have processes and calculators and all sorts of stuff where we think about qualifying and prioritizing projects that will have the greatest impact. So we're not looking for small, minute blips with our projects that we choose. We are looking for big, potentially disruptive, transformative change. And such as our decarbonised food production stuff with our extremophiles project, if we could really disrupt the food production system and demonstrate a different way, that would have significant impacts on, emissions. And I think because we need to fly to locations to make our projects happen, we're a global business, we really strongly and heavily feel that emissions burden when we do that. So we don't fail to see the irony of flying to events like COP to get renewable projects over the line, right? Mm-hmm. So that guilt sort of and burden help us select a project working on sustainable aviation fuels so that we can fly and feel okay about it. So we're planting more native trees, we're thinking about using those calculators, great calculators out there, really simple to use, but we're also thinking about how to disrupt the emissions as well. So we're working on both sides of that equation. Yeah.
So 2030 is the end goal for the Sustainable Development Goals. Andy, where do you want to be in 2030? And I'm specifically not, I'm saying, where do you want to be? So that could be for your company or for you personally, as you look ahead for, this big push that all companies need to engage in, as well as other actors in society to advance the global goals.
Yeah, I think all the problems just sound so complex and overwhelming. You get all these bad messaging. It's so hard, and this extreme language around climate and how hard it is. But I think in reality, it's actually really quite simple. We just need everybody, and I'm paraphrasing a Roosevelt quote here, but to do what they can with what they have where they are. And I think it's really simple. I don't think it's that complex. The same as gender inequality. It's not that hard. You just decide to take action and you make it happen in your businesses. And I also think if you all could meet the amazing women and people I get to know and the great work that they're doing, like Susan and all our other colleagues and WE Empower and Vital Voices, I think you would feel as optimistic as I do about what 2030 could look like. And I know that we can do it. We can achieve those goals. And it is actually within our grasp. And I have real confidence in that we could do it. We just need everyone to stop waiting for the perfect solution and waiting for other people to solve it. I think we all have to act really imperfectly because we can't wait for perfect, and we have to do it now. And we need to do it together. So I think about a Māori proverb when I think about this is about the community. We just need to act imperfectly. Now it goes, e hara takatoa, e te toa takatahi, engari he toa takatini, which means the strength to do it is not mine alone, but it's that of many. And I think we can do it. And I think it's just doing what you can where you are.
It's wonderful. Susan, how about you? Where do you want to be in 2030?
In 2030, I want our biospheres to be recirculating air in as many buildings around the world as we can. We've found this incredible technology that we've proven can remove the air toxins that are the reason why ASHRAE makes us pull in more and more air and just exhaust it out, right? So the reason why buildings doubled their greenhouse gas emissions is because when COVID happened, the solution was just increase the airflow. But every time you increase airflow, the energy footprint is from heating and cooling that new air. So we're pulling air into buildings, heating it in Canada, cooling it in Singapore, and it's cost. That's where the cost and the footprint's coming from. And now buildings, the built environment, are almost 40% of our global emissions. So while everyone has been talking about car exhaust, our biggest emitter is now buildings. And they've doubled. So how are we supposed to hit our goals if we're doubling our emissions rather than reducing them by 30%? And we have this technology, and I've been traveling to and making meetings wherever I go to make partnerships to develop this, but it's still a lack of funding. And it again comes back to that procurement factor, right? If you want to make a difference, you have to make it with your pocketbook. And a lot of times people will just choose the cheaper and the easier and the quicker because that's human nature. But you really have to choose your core values. And like at Origen Air, our core values are sustainability, grit, equality, among others. But on the if I have chosen that as a core value and I stick with it, that's how my company is going to succeed. Like, so for instance, almost all of the personal air purifiers on the market are made with virgin plastic. And every industrial designer I've talked to is like, oh, virgin plastic. And every investor I have is like, oh, use virgin plastic. And I'm like, no, this is my core value. And I refuse to put more virgin plastic into the environment. Like, sure, there might be a teeny little piece for the fan because I can't control 100%, but my entire unit is going to be 100% recycled plastic. And I think that's the way I'm going to succeed in the future, because people are starting, especially the younger generation, they're not going to keep buying these virgin plastic appliances that we know are ending up in a landfill 2 years later. So pick your core values and stick with them. Now, I've one entrepreneur friend who had very similar core values, and then he listened to all the people saying, you have to do this. You'll save $50 a unit by using virgin plastic instead of using recycled. And his company didn't make it, because you have to pick those values as a business owner. You know, when I haven't stuck to making sure my employees are aligned, they don't work out. So every decision you make in a business should be from your core values. So really do a lot of thinking about that. And once you've chosen them, stick to them, even if it's hard, even if you're going to spend $20, $30 more a unit, to stick to those values. As sustainability and sustainable products is I believe what is going to make us cross this chasm and get to a point that I'm making these large biospheres in 2030. And on that front, like I'm looking for partners who want to build a beautiful building with me with my genetically enhanced plants for circulating the air. And I have some funding to do it. So please reach out.
Fantastic. Well, I think you have both hit on such important themes. Make a difference where you are, Andy. That fortitude, the importance of partnerships, Susan, the clinging to core values, and not being willing to take shortcuts just because you think that there's pressure to do so. That's really important. But let me ask you both, what is a final word that you would like to leave our audience with today? Maybe starting with you, Andy.
Yeah, I think the final word I'd like to leave is we do not have time to wait. 2030 is, I was going to say 7 years, it's 6 years away now. So I would suggest that stop waiting for the perfect solution. It's not hard. It's really simple. Just do what you can and act now, wherever you are, in your homes, in your workspaces. Stop waiting. We need everybody to move, and we need them to act now. So I would say act.
Wonderful. And Susan?
If you're inspired, do something about it. So often, like, we've had the most incredible experiences pitching our companies to rooms of people, and the atmosphere is electric afterwards. Like when we pitched in New York for WE Empower, the room was buzzing. You could feel it. It was one of the most amazing nights of my life. And sometimes I feel like we inspire people so much that they sit back and they're like, oh, they're doing it. Sometimes I feel like I just make people sleep well. Well, I'm not sleeping at all. So when you feel that inspiration, and you also couple that with the struggles that female entrepreneurs have, act, because the solutions are out there. Like Andy says, we can do this. There are hundreds of companies and hundreds of male and female founders like us that have found the innovations. And if anything entrepreneurs do well is we move quickly. We have a fire under our heels, and we will push the solution forward fast if we have the ammo to do it. One of the and that's not the right word, but yeah, let's switch the ammo from there to the real solutions. Maybe it is the right word. One of the courses that inspired me in my undergrad in environmental studies was real cost accounting. Like right now, we don't apply any value to the earth. And if we did, it wouldn't be an increase in GDP when there was a war, right? Like it's backwards how we're calculating costs. And we need to start putting a value on the environment so it's calculated in the gross domestic product if we're going to have success. So I want to leave those two thoughts with everyone, but the most important part is, support us. We're working every day, and if I could spend my entire day working on the solution rather than trying to figure out where I get the next dollar to help me do the solution, I'd be working even faster.
Well, I have loved talking to you, Susan and Andrea. You both are incredibly inspiring. Thank you. Happy International Women's Day. Keep going, keep doing this fantastic work. And we look forward to staying in touch with you and watching your businesses grow. I have no doubt that you're going to be where you want to be by 2030, and the world will be a better place for it. Thank you both so much.
Kia ora, thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. And happy International Women's Day.